Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Week in Guns, powered by Second Amendment Foundation and brought to you by Patriot Patch Company, VZGRIPS, MAF Corporation, and Primary Arms. This show offers commentary on the latest firearms industry news, information, and buzz, and boy, do we have a show for you today. I'm your host, Matthew Rosier, and I'm joined by a spinning rat.
That's true. It's me. I'm less obnoxious this time, but I am not obnoxious, because that wouldn't be fun.
I haven't decided if we are letting the audience off easy or hard.
That's true.
Because they're trying to do reverse psychology on me. They're commenting saying, "Oh, why isn't he spinning as hard? Why isn't he spinning as hard?" And then some people are saying he's spinning too hard, and I'm like, I don't know what you guys are trying to make me do, but I'm going to try to do the opposite of that.
We're doing a reset here. We'll see. We have to return to something a little bit more tame, and then based on the public reception, adjust accordingly. Yeah. Of course, we have to edit this part out. We can't let them know our plan to reverse psychology them.
Yeah.
Of course.
That is certainly a thing with it. And you audio listeners are probably so confused. You are unaware of the
antics.
The antics that I, for some reason, decide to play on my loving and adoring audience. Which I'm very appreciative of, actually, unironically. So, we're going to do a little bit of talking about permitless carry in this episode.
Yeah, there's a lot of permitless carry stuff happening all over the place.
Yeah, and so before we get into that, why don't we kind of talk about the term constitutional carry?
It is a little bit of a funny term. It's word game. I mean, all of politics is word games and lip service, right?
Yeah.
As well as like lizards sunning themselves so that their scales do the good stuff.
Their scales has to do the good stuff, and also the blood.
They're cold.
Is actually cold.
That's true.
This is something that a lot of people don't understand, and so if they don't get on that rock, they might slow down and fall out of the tree.
They got to set the Constitution on fire for warmth.
Yeah, they do that too. But so. What would to you, a rat paralegal, what would a actual bill that you could call constitutional carry, what would that look like?
Oh, geez. The Constitution itself has no, beyond some ramblings about militias and stuff, has no specific adherence to the carriage of firearms. It's not a power that Congress delegated to itself. So it's I guess the reason they go with constitutional carry is because they think calling it permitless carry is too scary or whatever. But again, that's of course it's lip service and words games. But
I honestly think there is a constitutional there could be a constitutional carry bill.
There could.
And what that would look like to me would be a bill that makes it so the state law reflects the idea of arms that is encompassed with the right to keep and bear arms, not even in the Second Amendment, just the natural core human right.
Right.
And so what that law would look like textually is basically, you're right, it's a visual basic program that will be run on the state code books. And so what the law would look like, it would be set up to find every instance of firearm, pistol, handgun, revolver, rifle, shotgun, everything like that. And then when it finds that, it highlights the adjoining 120 words and deletes them. And just runs through the entire code. I think that, so basically deleting every reference to carrying a gun in the law and making it so that it is completely unregulated. I think
right. So if you wanted something that's regulates carry the way that the Constitution probably should regulate carry or has the power to regulate carry. It's nothing, right? A constitutional carry bill wouldn't have the, oh, but if you have to get this training in order to be a constitutional carry guy. Oh, and also there's still this requirement and that requirement. You can't carry them here. And if your gun's too long, too short, too round, too square, if it's Tuesday, if it's raining, if it rained last Thursday and your cat's name is Steven, probably not going to be okay.
And also, well, there is one type of restriction that is contemplated by the Constitution. If you're carrying an XD, you don't belong carrying a gun. You don't need to. Or if the only AK you own is from the former Yugoslavia.
Well, perhaps, or if your AK wasn't made in an ex-communist country.
Yes, or a former client state.
That's true.
Right. So there's a few restrictions that would be constitutional.
Those restrictions are okay.
Because the founders, they had good taste in guns, right?
That's true. They would carry Dracos.
They would have told. Did we talk about this?
We might have talked about this. I would do a Revolutionary War with the Draco. That would be a good one.
The Drake is ideal.
It's a really
and I'm being unironic.
It really is a good gun.
It is an actual good gun.
We ended up gaslighting ourselves into getting Dracos and shooting them, and then it turns out that's like it's actually a really, really competent AK. Without the stock, it's not so great. Without something to brace against your shoulder, or other body part or whatever. But so just a quick backstory because we keep talking about the Draco on the show. One, I will drop a little hint. We have a big project in the works. Yeah, it's a big one.
It's big.
It's a little one. It's technically littler, but it's big.
But it's huge. So be looking forward for that. And two, so how this Draco arc started was I had a friend who was in our Discord, which, by the way, if you give me money, you can join our Discord and we'll bully you.
Yeah, you can get bullied.
And he was saying, hey, I'm really thinking about buying an M1A. I want to do more shooting out at, 200 yards, something like that. And I was like, do not buy that gun. Like,
M1A is a bad gun.
M1A is a terrible gun. Especially he wanted to put an optic on it. And I said, because you cannot mount an optic to an M1A and have it like reasonably hold zero.
There's a reason that every M1A that's ever actually been semi-successfully turned into a DMR costs like $4,000. It's not because they're scalping you. It's because that gun will fight. Like everything about that gun's DNA is telling it can't do this. Like, but I really don't want to be accurate. No, please. Yeah. No, please.
Yeah. So I told him, I said, check this out. You do your M1A. I'm going to come with a Draco and I'm going to beat you at 100 yards. I'm going to beat you. And he was like, no, come on. The Draco's a piece of crap. And I was like, no. And so, then you joined in and we just started like, no,
we kept telling him like the only salient choice you could possibly make if you want to shoot longer distance. So you want something 30 cal.
Yeah.
And you want something that's, auto loading, of course, because it's modern gear and we don't use bolt actions. Then you want something that's detachable magazine because, stuff that feeds off of clips is just kind of weird and not the coolest, right? And so the only logical gun, like what am I describing? It's the Draco.
The Draco,
long range, 30 cal, takes magazines and self loading.
Yep. And so we just kept saying this so much that we kept saying it to each other. And then now we have Dracos, and we're like, whoa, we were right. Whoa.
Turns out they're actually not so bad.
Yeah, they're actually great. You got to get the real Drakes though. I don't want to see you come at me with a Pioneer.
Nope. Sorry. Sorry. Unwashed masses.
Gross. But so yeah. Anyway, all of that to explain the Draco arc. But now we're going to talk about permitless carry. Sorry about that little segue. So this first story we got right here, South Carolina House OKs permitless carry of handguns. So it seems that South Carolina and Florida are fighting for this this next spot. And what did you see that was interesting here?
So not only is it like, one more, so it seems this year we're definitely going to have more than half of the states in the country be permitless carry, which is cool, right? Because 10 years ago, this movement was like, it was nowhere. So it's certainly cropping up and it's awesome to see. And probably the coolest thing about it is that, we talked about before, pro-gun Congress lizards usually are like barely, like, they wouldn't tell you the difference between a 12 gauge and a 20 gauge, right? They really don't know a lot about guns. They're just not outwardly hostile to the idea of people owning them. And that's usually what you get from pro-gun legislators. So it's really cool to see them, grasp onto something that I think personally is a pretty complex idea, that being like people can carry guns without a permission slip from the government. That seems like that'd be something that somebody who doesn't really know a ton about guns but maybe isn't hostile to the idea of guns, I would usually predict these people to be sort of like, yeah, I don't know, that seems a little crazy. They should have to pay a little bit of money and then get a little number on a card, and that would make it safe. It's a super cool thing to see. And that South Carolina is the state in question here, right?
Yep.
My mind's all over the place. South Carolina, I went and checked. Their Senate makeup seems like it'll be a very good chance that this bill passes.
They did shoot down another one 2 years ago.
Did they? That's interesting.
Yep. So that is one thing. But I mean, it was in the House, it went through 90-30. So, it's up to the Senate. The Senate is where one was shot down before. And of course, South Carolina anti-gun politicians have very... nuanced takes here. Rep. J.A. Moore accused Republicans of publicly supporting a measure privately acknowledged by some as a bad bill.
Yeah, some people don't like this, so you can't like it.
My sister was murdered by a legal gun that a white supremacist terrorist should not have had, Moore said. So shame on y'all for playing politics with people's lives, he said immediately after playing politics over the corpse of his sister.
Murdered with a legal gun. With the legal gun.
Well, no, because murder is legal in South Carolina.
Surely if we told him that he shouldn't have had that gun, then he wouldn't have been able to murder, because
correct.
Yeah, not having the gun, that those extra 5 years you'd face in jail would make you think twice. Like, life in prison plus 5 years? I'm not getting out of there.
No, you're done, Buster. But don't worry, one day the law will catch up and we will make being a terrorist illegal.
Yeah, that's true. We should try that.
Yep. We're going to have lists, keep you from getting on the plane and everything.
That's a good idea.
So yeah, it would still have restrictions. It would restrict people from bringing guns into detention centers, courthouses, polling places, government offices, school, athletic events. Why? What is always the obsession with the athletic events?
I think it's because you can have a school of, like, some schools have athletic events that aren't at schools.
Yeah, but like,
so you've got like school attendance there, and so it's like you have a gun in school. You're really cutting it close there, buddy.
Right. Yeah, but so schools, religious sanctuaries, and doctors' offices, among other locations. So I've always hated the religious sanctuary thing. Private trespass works to handle that. Right. Of course, this doesn't apply if you're a cop, National Guardsman, militia member, or members of the judiciary. After some discussion, lawmakers added public defenders and county clerks to the list.
All right. So members of the judiciary. So judges are exempt, right?
Yep.
All right. So if you were a judgy wudgy and you were decked out in your cool black combat robes or whatever, what would you carry under your robes? What would your EDC be? For me, it'd be a Draco.
For me, it would be a Draco. Yeah.
Drop in the comments. Everybody drop in the comments what your gun would be, and if it's not a Draco, make fun of anybody who doesn't say they would wear a Draco under their robes.
Yeah, no, because that's
bully them.
Yeah, bully them. If it was not a Draco, it would be. Oh no, I
can't
even say it.
2 Dracos.
No, yeah, if it was not a Draco, it would be a mini Draco.
Yeah, there we go.
or 3 micro Dracos.
3 micro Dracos. Curious of micro Dracos. Yeah. You do not need the sights. You've got 3.
And I'd have VZGRIPS Hyena Brown.
That's true.
I'd get another somehow. But yeah, so the measure would effectively lower the age at which South Carolinians can carry a concealed gun. State law allows anyone 18 or older to purchase a gun, but concealed weapon permits have only been available to people over 21. So that's, I guess that's interesting. Because most of these, stick to the 21 obsession. Mm-hmm. It does do some bad things, though. It brings it like effectively adds equivalent prohibitions to federal law to state law.
Right.
So, why?
It doesn't seem like it's helping. It's or necessary, but all right.
No, it honestly just gives prosecutors one more bargaining chip to keep anyone from ever experiencing a jury trial, because they will just threaten to tack on more additional charges. So
right.
Yeah, so in addition to allowing permitless carry, the bill would bar people convicted of most felonies from firearm possession and align state penalties with federal law. Violations would draw prison terms up to 5 years for a first offense, 5 to 20 for a second offense, and 10 to 30 for a subsequent offense. There are also exemptions for those convicted of business crimes, such as antitrust violations or unfair trade practices.
Those are the guys you have to watch out for. They're murderous rampagers.
Yeah. It would also exempt anyone convicted of a misdemeanor punishable by 5 years imprisonment or less, which is actually not an insane thing to do because of the way federal law is drafted. It includes some misdemeanors.
Right.
So it's like South Carolina, you're just being weird.
A little bit.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, and one state lawmaker said that that section amounted to a gun grab consistent with President Jonathan Biden's anti-Second Amendment agenda. Democrats criticized their counterparts for creating a new criminal law restricting firearm ownership within this supposed expansion of gun rights, which, I mean, yeah, they're right.
It's the stone toss meme. What's going on in this tug of war, and why are you on our side?
Democratic Rep. Seth Rose charged Republicans with squeezing two measures into one bill in a bait and switch that bypassed the necessary committee process, where law enforcement officials have previously expressed opposition to similar permitless carry. So they're tricking them. It's so funny. Yeah, no. Now cops are in favor of it because they're like, "Oh, we get to charge them for everything."
That's great.
This is great. Oh, Cox supported the effort. Said both protects law-abiding gun owners and targets violent criminals. Cox said lawmakers worked extensively on the bill with the National Rifle Association, South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, and local sheriffs. I believe you.
I am not surprised.
Yep. All right. Yeah. Now, next up, we got another little carry bill. West Virginia. Mountain Mama passes campus carry bill, heads to the governor. The bill that would allow people with concealed carry permits to bring firearms on West Virginia public colleges and university campuses is headed to the desk of Republican Governor Jim Justice. What a name.
That's powerful.
That's high end.
Governor Jim Justice. Governor Jim Justice. Say that 5 times.
Governor Jim Justice. Yeah, the House of Delegates voted overwhelmingly in favor of the legislation on Tuesday. Justice has not said publicly whether he will sign the bill passed last month by the Senate, where half of the entire chamber, all Republicans, were listed as sponsors. I don't know. Sounds like that's going.
Yeah, seems likely.
Oh, and then there's like some... Wow, there's some of the opposite. See, this is the type of emotional argument that is helpful to the cause. Honecker and other officers were responsible for the harrowing task of notifying parents their children had been killed in the Virginia Tech massacre. The massacre in which 32 people were killed remains the deadliest school shooting in U.S. history. Please hear me. Years ago, I sat on the foot of my bed with Windex and paper towels, and I washed the blood of almost 30 kids off my shoes because of an active shooter on a college campus. He said, I fear that if I do not support this legislation and it happens again, washing their blood off my shoes will not compare to trying to wash the blood off my hands, he continued. Dang.
That's pretty impactful.
Yeah. What makes this issue even more weighty for me is that it isn't just a policy issue, even though it is a policy issue. He said, what makes it even more weighty is it is in fact a constitutional issue. We cannot escape that.
He is not wrong.
The Second Amendment is my gun permit, and that's all I have to say about that.
Truth. Amen, brother.
Oh, yeah. So I think campus carry is an interesting thing, right?
It really is. It's one of those where I see, more sort of across the aisle agreement and disagreement than you'd expect. Right. Looking at an issue that's essentially are adults who choose to go to higher education after high school really adults or not? Because like with some exception, right? Because some colleges have nursing classes where they have children there at the school. Otherwise, pretty much everybody there is always an adult, right? So it's like an environment.
Aside from the and this is like what happened in Georgia with theirs is that you could carry in a class unless there were students that were dual enrolled high school students, in which case it had to be treated as a high school.
Which yeah, that's certainly a possibility, but like for the most part, like that's the closest you're going to have to guaranteeing everybody there is an adult,
right?
Than like any other sort of public place,
right?
Like
because
at a restaurant or at a movie or a bar, you're not at a bar.
At a bar, there's somebody at the door that checks your thing, right?
And
there, you're not allowed in most states.
In some bars, like as long as you don't sit at the high tops, it's fine, right? There's like the family side of the eating bar and then the drinking side of the bar.
Yeah, and then it's funny, like in Florida, you are allowed to carry your gun into the eating side where the children's is.
Right.
But if you go to the adult zone,
no, you can't do that.
You can't do it. Utterly carked. But so yeah, I guess so. You identified all the points, right? This is purely an adult thing. And it's, I think that's actually a quite salient point you make, that these people are more likely to be adults than, for example, a shopping mall or a movie theater establishment, such as a drive-in. So
if we're subscribing to the insane theory that kids being exposed to guns equals bad always, because like it doesn't, but you know, that's,
I don't know, like how we turned out.
The sort of common plea is that it's for the chillins or whatever, but there's generally speaking less chillins at a high school, at a college rather, than pretty much any other public place or sensitive area as they want to describe them as, than anywhere else.
Well, and here's the fundamental disconnect for me. Because people always say it's for the children, you know. This is a conversation I've had with a few people recently where they're like, oh, well, I mean, you carry a gun. Well, what about when you have a kid? And then they look at me like they're holding four aces.
2 guns.
And I'm like, then I have more to protect?
That's not one that I've heard, but I can perfectly imagine somebody like rationalizing like, oh, you like guns? What if you have a kid?
Yeah, what do you got? Huh?
I'll teach them to shoot when they come of an age like 5 when I was taught to shoot.
Yeah. And I like to remember them, remind them of the old quotes written about Americans by visiting English authors, which were that we were the most competent riflemen of our epoch in the world. And that children barely able to walk were shouldering the likeness of the rifle within a crib.
That's true.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, that's big. That's a high important. Energy. That's so. Yeah, no, it's just like, I mean, we've talked about this in a couple shows before. Like, you know, my mom has a gun, and she like, one time I was hanging out. I had just eaten a big meal, and so I wanted to relax, and so I took my gun off and put it on the table so I could kind of lean back. And she's like, "You carry a gun around your mother?" And I go, "Yes." And she's like, "Why would you do that?" And I just go, because I love you. You know, it's so like there's like a fundamental disconnect, right?
Right. There's almost like different languages being spoken as far as like and we've talked about it before. Like there's people who see a gun purely as a means to do evil, and if the limit of your exposure to guns is purely what you see in movies and TVs in the news and such, I don't know that I'd blame you for holding such an opinion if that was the extent of your exposure to guns, which is a big part of why the sort of effort to bring people, even people who seem outwardly anti-gun, to expose them to guns in any sort of positive light, even if it doesn't necessarily involve shooting, right? Something as simple as cleaning a gun or caring for something that's old and passed down through family and stuff, that's got intrinsic value that shows people that guns aren't evil things by nature, and in fact there's things that you can do with a gun that aren't even shooting them that brings families together or whatever.
Yeah, like my Fox carbine is a fun puzzle to figure out how to get the safeties off. But yeah, no, you're 100% right on that. You're 100% right. And because if you don't have a parent that uses a gun, or exposes you to guns. I'm lucky because I didn't, but my mom wanted to make sure, because I was raised primarily by a single mom. My dad was French while he was alive, so you can't really count that. I'm just kidding. I love my parents, but she wanted to make sure, so she exposed me to people who did shot, and I had a great time with them. But aside from that, and I grew up in the grew up in the 90s. Some people will argue whatever, and the only exposure I had about guns, even then, was I remember they had put on a cartoon. They'd wheeled in the AV thing with the VHS, and they had a cartoon where a little cat told you like what to do if you ever see a gun.
Right.
And it was like horrifying.
Right. It's like a coiled rattlesnake, and it's just waiting to bite you.
Yeah, it's like you need to call a grown up, and you need to get out of that room right away. And look, that's not a bad. It's
not a bad thing to teach to kids that aren't going to know any better, especially in school districts where like you can't teach them how to use a gun safely or how to safely handle a gun or whatever else, right? Because
it was just missing a lot of context, right? Which is like, why would your parents have a gun? Oh, well, for these reasons. But when your parents will eventually tell you blah 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 blah. For right now, here's what to do if you find one. Whatever. But anyway. So yeah, I guess, okay, West Virginia, whatever, good job. Speaking of good jobs, VZGRIPS.
VZGRIPS.
The VZ Grip. New VZ Hydra. G10 daggers. X-Tech Wilson Combat X9 grips. VZ Tactical Slant for the Beretta 92X. Wow, there's a lot of items available for sale on VZGRIPS.com. They are a good Florida company. They sponsor the show, and they support my habits. What should we look at this time? We always try to look at something weird. Let's look at their clearance section.
That's true. See what clearance has up for us.
Other semi-auto. I don't want any of that. Let's go to 1911.
Yeah, the 191911.
Yeah, the model 911.
19191.
Whoa! There's actually really cool ones here on clearance. Look at this.
The red, white, and blue one, at the bottom, I kind of like the red, white, and blue.
Dude,
one.
I got to get this Whirlpool one. You guys got to check this out. That's sick. It's like a purple and black and dark purple and gray stripes. And is this red, white, and blue?
I like that.
Oh, that's actually pretty cash money as well. And dude, they're like $40 and $50. And if you use promotional code ThisWeek15, THISWEEK15, you're going to get an additional discount. It's a Florida company and they're good. Yeah.
I have it on good authority that they taste test each of these to make sure that they're delectable for if you want to taste them too.
I was there for the tasting. So anyway, go to VZGRIPS.com, use promo code ThisWeek15 and get yourself a set of grips. Check out the clearance stuff. You might like it.
Mr. Clarence has the deals.
All right. So next up, I just did a whole video on this. Florida's permitless carry bill. So you'd think if you were getting rid of carry permits, your bill would be pretty short, right?
Well, you'd think.
Let's just take a look. Here's the bill text, and I'm going to unlock the scroll wheel on my mouse, and we're going to start scrolling, and we'll see when I get to the bottom, okay? All right, starting now.
For audio listeners, he's scrolling. He's scrolling.
There we go, page 103. We got to
103 pages. That's what it takes 103 pages for them to explain that you can carry a gun without a permission slip that you paid for. Maybe.
That's not even what they do. The digest of the bill, where they're supposed to explain in single sentences what the bill does, it takes 5 pages. And it does all this bizarre stuff. It half of the bill is spent setting up training programs for school cops so that they can better, turn a minor juvenile indiscretion into a, lifelong problematic criminal history. Because, that's what they're good at. For some reason, vaguely expands the definition of the term machine gun, redefines the term handgun, it does a lot here. It does, in fact, make it so you don't necessarily have to have a carry permit, but there is a whole laundry list of things that you still need to have in order to be able to carry a gun. They did dispense with the training requirement, which was one of the stupidest things about Florida's law.
My understanding was that they dropped the training requirement, and then that was pretty much it. So, like, if you meet all the other criteria, then you're fine. You're fine.
So there was two things. They dropped the training requirement and that you presently desire to have a firearm for the lawful purpose of self-defense.
Okay.
Yes. But they also set up the school intervene, like the threat response force.
Stuff like this always worries me so much, because on its face, this is a good and noble thing, right? You're giving schools the resources they need to deal with something as it arises. But the problem is you give a monkey lizard a hammer, he's going to go and find nails.
Yeah.
And like almost invariably, this just ends up being used to ruin people's life. So somebody makes like an off-color joke, or somebody's having a bad day, and so they just blurt something out that they didn't really mean. And then this ends up being used as something that's held over them the rest of their life, because these schools were given a mechanism that should be used to investigate if something was a problem and then take action. But they forget about the whole investigation part and instead just take action essentially without discretion,
right?
And then ruin people's lives over stupid stuff.
Yep. And so it requires them to develop a statewide behavioral threat management operational process, a Florida-specific behavioral threat assessment instrument, and a threat management portal. So all of this to say that, like, you got a bowl cut, you're going to the principal's office.
You clearly your trouble causer. Bowl cut trench coat, get him out of here.
Get in there, gamer. Get out.
If you got a KD better than 3 in Fortnite, you're out of here, buddy.
Dunzo. Bye.
Out of here. Mass murderer in training.
Yeah. But like, this is the last thing, in my opinion, right? This is the last thing we need. And by the way, as a result of this bill, they allocate like $60 million.
Of course, right? Because these things always have to be like massively expensive.
Right.
And then this becomes one of those programs where like they're expected to use all that money, and they can't use that money unless they're finding kids with bowl cuts or good KDs in Fortnite to make examples of.
And what do you think? You want to other these people more? Yeah, drag them out of class.
Right. Drag them out of a classroom in front of everybody else, and then have the rumors go around the school that like, oh, they had a gun or whatever, and they were there to shoot people. When really, like, the worst thing that happened is like they made a joke about a school shooting or whatever.
Right.
And not like joking, threatening to do it. The way these things usually work out is like you make a unfunny joke about a past school shooting or whatever, and then people, that's all the justification these sort of systems need to like. We need to start red flagging teenagers who make stupid jokes all the time about everything.
Right. Yep. And so, like, I don't want to say that there's. So, okay, I'm going to say a couple things. One, there is a lot of ink being spilled around these situations, right? Mass casualty situations. If you actually look at the data, like, schools are the least likely subject.
Right, it's like it's awful when it happens,
right? But
ends up being one of the least likely places for someone to die.
Exactly.
Like schools are already very safe. It's just that we have usually multiple murders a night on city streets, and that just happens and goes unreported. And then you see 3 people shot at a college, and it's in the news for 2-3 weeks.
Right.
Just sort of the way the news cycle works is nobody cares. Well, I guess it changed today. I don't know if we had the story for it, but there was a homeless guy in St. Louis the day that we're recording this. And he was sitting there on a sidewalk, and a guy walks up to him, loads a handgun, jams it while trying to load it, and spends like 30 seconds trying to clear his jam, finally gets around in the chamber, just shoots the homeless guy in the head while people are just standing around watching this whole thing happen. And it's just kind of bizarre. Like, that will get a little bit of media coverage just because of how absurd it is. But usually that sort of thing happens rather frequently, very frequently.
Well, not even that. Let's talk about the things that are actually costing people their lives. Medical malpractice. All the states seem to want to do is make it harder to sue doctors.
Right.
So they get more emblazoned in their, how many, like, and just look, I don't do med mal, but you know how many cases that I've seen, just me, of people wanting to get me involved, where the doctors leave tools in people's bodies.
Yeah, and make very, very obvious mistakes.
Working on the wrong limb, like it happens like way too often. And
Much more
what the state
frequently than you'd
legislation,
think.
they're going to spend all this money going for a tragedy that like has a realistic chance of like 1 in 100 million, really. And like I'm sorry, I'm not going to say that it's a bad idea to want to stop it, right? Especially if you're passionate, you should try to make a difference wherever you want to do, no matter how small the problem. If you try to help, you help. But
this will help.
But yeah, this won't help. And on top of that, combining, right, the permitless carry thing with a bill about mass casualty situations, or you know, what you're doing, Florida Republicans, is you're telling the other side, you're right, gun rights and mass casualty situations are connected.
They're contingent, right?
Yeah. And so if we're gonna give, you know, restore a little nougat of gun right, we're gonna give them a little crumb. We're gonna have to spend 60 mil on making sure that Las Vegas is, you know, are gonna not.
Making sure that an area that you're very specifically not allowed to carry with or without your permit is extra safe from this extra wave of people who aren't allowed to carry there. I don't. Like, who are you giving these assurances to, and why? Because the other side doesn't care. The other side, the other side isn't willing to make this trade. So you're offering them up. You're offering them up this little bonus for no reason. Yeah. Or perhaps Florida Republicans just by and large believe, like, I
don't know.
We need more. We need the police Stasi in schools to red flag our teenagers. It's important.
Yeah, bowl cut, face the wall. Yeah, I think it's outrageous. They combining them, treating them as if they have to go hand in hand. It's wildly problematic.
It's really not a smart idea.
And also, and this is the other point I wanted to make. These are actually laudable goals to kind of look out for the people that might actually have a problem. These are people who have something troubled going on in their brain, right? So I think history has proven that a government checklist and sending a guy with a gun, a cop, to one of these people does not help.
Yeah, sending some sort of meathead after him is not going to help. If this was $60 million for people who are, you know, some sort of trained or licensed psychiatric help individuals, I would feel much more confident about this being used.
Well, they do have it. You can refer it to in here, but
they can.
That's one possibility. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So it's just not going to do anything. So what I'm saying is these goals can be accomplished if school administrators actually gave 1/16 of a shit about their kids.
Right.
You know, got invested in them, and wanted to talk to them, right? Make sure that the schools are not fostering intense toxic environments, which is the kind of machine that they've created.
Right.
But yeah, so yeah, Florida, bad. But I get, yeah. Thanks for the one little nugget of respecting our rights, Florida.
Good work.
So yeah, guys, wait for the Fudbusters video that's coming out on that soon. I'm really proud of it. I get very passionate in it though, and I start kind of going off. Next up, we got a new report in from the boss.
The boss man.
Yep, Boss Hogg.
Boss Hogg.
Mr. Boss David Hogg is letting us know that the NRA invented the idea of individual rights.
That's true.
Warped understanding. Second. Yeah. So what is? Yes, I support the Second Amendment. I support your state's rights to have a National Guard as the framers intended. If you want to have a gun, you ought to be part of that as the well-regulated militia.
The sort of insane, you know, and this is something he's done before, and probably just probably just engagement trolling at this point. Well,
Right.
of course, maybe he is this stupid. I'm inclined to believe he might actually just be this stupid. Seeing as he goes to Harvard and he says all of his professors agree with him, that's a sure sign of stupid. But the thing that sort of struck me funny about this is, if you're not familiar with who David Hogg is, he's a survivor of the Parkland. He went to the Parkland school that was shot up, and he since has got very involved in gun control advocacy and is like tied in with the big gun control Bloomberg funded groups. And he's always had these sort of bizarre takes on gun control, such as this one, where the Second Amendment specifically only means that a state has a right to levy a militia, which is insane. And that's not found, from a standpoint of constitutional analysis, that's not found anywhere. And the gun control groups that he's sort of buddy with don't even argue that in court.
Right.
Like they're not
foreclosed.
Right. They're not even willing to try and twist things in court to that extreme. There is this notion that you had some slight founding or some slight foundation around the founding of the country, that the Second Amendment applied only to people who were going to be militia service eligible.
Right.
And that sort of fell out of favor very quickly in the courts. And then
also remember the original draft of the Second Amendment.
Right. The original draft of the Second Amendment said, after the right to keep and bear arms, it said for the common defense. And that was not agreed to.
That was soundly defeated.
They completely removed the mention of for the common defense, which to me indicates they realize it's the right of the people to keep and bear arms.
Right.
And they're not saying what for.
Yes.
And so the constitutional analysis that took place after the founding, pretty much, if there was ever a question of if the Second Amendment was a individual, nobody essentially questioned. Everybody agreed the Second Amendment was an individual right for the individual to own a gun for themselves.
Right.
And the only question, debate around the Second Amendment in the time, essentially from the founding to the Civil War, was what kind of guns you could own. And it was a question of if you could only own military style firearms, stuff that's useful for militia service, or if you can own other stuff too.
And a lot of that debate was because of like hunting restrictions that were going. And so there weren't very major cases that happened back then because it didn't really matter. Right. People, I've talked about it so many times on this channel, the original understanding of the Second Amendment. If you can look that up on my YouTube, but like, prominent figures were quoted as saying, in America, those who have property and wish to sport with it may make their gardens into parks of artillery if they so please.
Right. Like if you throw a rock around like early constitutional debate, everybody seems to be pretty much on the same page that it's an individual right. Right. And I've mentioned it before, that lawyer who works with the California Rifle Pistol Association, whose name is Greek.
Greek
so
gentleman,
I have no chance of pronouncing it. Yeah, but his last name's Kostas, Kostas. I'm assuming that's how you say that. Right. But he's a real sharp guy, and with Stephen Gutowski of the Reload, he did a research study on sort of where did this idea that the Second Amendment is a collective right come from, and it's. There's like a couple examples of people maybe suggesting it around the time of the founding, but like, they're massively outnumbered by people like, no, it's an individual right.
Right.
And then it doesn't show up again until like well after the Civil War.
Right.
So like,
and then also remember one other thing about the Constitution. At the time, it was never intended to apply to the states.
Right.
And so that's kind of the reason it was focused on militias, because the concern was that the federal government would attempt to do something about state armed forces, about state militias, to prevent it from overthrowing the federal government.
Right.
And that's why this type of debate was had. And some of the people who opposed the inclusion of the Bill of Rights said the reason for their opposition was, point to me the power in the Constitution that the federal government has to affect anyone's individual rights. Their theory was that the powers were so limited and defined that it would never be an issue, and that enumeration of rights would encourage federal actors to attempt to skirt those.
Right, paint within the lines.
Yes. And look what happened.
Not only have they painted within the lines, they've like they framed it on like this little whole Bob Ross masterpiece of like your rights are just like the little bit of unpainted mass in the middle of it, and they've painted all around the rest of it and gone like, oh, this is all of the different agencies we spawned because of the powers that we had, which were limited, very limited.
Right. Yep. And let me just also say, just because you mentioned him one more time, I love Stephen Gutowski. He is one of the smartest writers in this space. So, but anyway, yeah, so that's stupid David Hogg. All right, now, before we go on, got to mention, Fudbusters is partnered with Second Amendment Foundation. You guys often ask me, is there a national group I should support? Well, there's only one that I'd recommend supporting, and that's SAF. For nearly 50 years, the Second Amendment Foundation has been fighting for your Second Amendment rights. Having been involved in over 250 cases and with an active litigation load of over 40 suits, SAF has the expertise and experience necessary to fight government overreach and challenge unconstitutional laws. SAF, winning firearms freedoms one lawsuit at a time. To learn more or donate, check out the link in the description of the show notes, but I'll give it to you. It's bit.ly/SAF Busters. So feel free to check them out if you will. This is I like the little blurb you wrote for this next story. So this is the states are so reluctant, very reluctant. They just hate that they have to invoke racist laws to defend their current laws. Curses upon the mean Supreme Court for bullying them like this. So this is a Wall Street Journal article.
And just read the headline. The headline on this is so good.
Old racist guns enter modern day legal battles. Government lawyers reluctantly cite historical laws that kept guns from blacks, Native Americans,
they have no reluctance at all.
Yeah,
they throw every completely irrelevant racist law they can at these to see what sticks. There is, and this is another thing. Our favorite Greek lawyer from California who fights on gun cases, because there's lots of those. But our favorite one, he's called this the "I'm not racist but" challenge, and it's you're essentially having the challenge is that you're having the states that are trying to defend their gun laws get away. The challenge is see if they can defend one of their modern gun laws without relying on a racist law. And then of course they'll write a little excerpt, a little blurb saying like, oh, we don't agree with the intent of these original laws, but because they existed back then, we can have a version of that law that exists now, and it's fine. It's not a big deal. Right.
And it's funny because of the way Bruin outlined what is an analogous law.
Bruin specifically said you cannot rely on these racist laws. And of course, the heartbreaking thing there for the states is they realize like without that they've got nothing. Like the test of dangerous and unusual when it comes to people, especially. We want to take a guess who the dangerous people were back then.
Philadelphia.
Yeah, no.
Okay. New York.
Nope.
It was the Dutch.
Yeah, the Dutch. It was the darn Dutch. That's what it was.
Okay, well, I guess I'm not going to get this one. Certainly not the Catholics, right?
No.
It was the Catholics. But yeah, so and we're seeing this, and a lot of the reason they're having to do this is because the Duke Firearms Law Center, who is like my nemesis in terms of policy writing, they made this little cheat sheet. They're like, oh, well, if you need to find historically analogous laws, here's a list of them.
And it's literally just like down the list, like Native Americans can't own this, black people can't own this.
Yeah. Well, no. The way they cite them. So they have pre-written cites for these.
Oh, right, and they were cutting out the mentions of people's skin colors and stuff.
And also alluding to them being presently still in force when they're not. So I helped a state group in a lawsuit they were fighting. Amazing group, by the way. And like they had a tight deadline, and they were like, "You have to help us like respond to this." So I had to go through. And I think this was the first time somebody had to go through and counter all of this, assertion of these historically analogous laws. And out of like 80, do you know how many actually were still on the books?
Oh, like maybe 5, maybe two. Okay,
2.
single digits.
More than half. They claim to. It's a mess. This is a mess.
The sort of aftermath of Bruin has been absolutely devastating for these states, and I think it's probably a very good sign that they still seem to be like they're backpedaling still. They have no idea where to find their firm legal ground, because after Heller, they sort of immediately went to this like interest balancing plea that judges were just so eager to gobble up.
Right.
But there's been an awful lot of time since Bruin, right? And these guys are still like completely clueless how they find analogous laws. Because of course, Justice Thomas did us a solid by making it really difficult for them to find analogous laws, so much so that like they're like trying to say like, oh, this law that says that people of mixed race can't own guns, they were dangerous back then because people of mixed race, they thought back then they might be bad guys. So that means that people who aren't convicted of crimes in present day, we can assume that they're bad guys too.
That's true.
Of course, judges look at this and go, huh? which is good. Which is good for
do what?
They said what? And so it'll certainly be interesting, right? Because we're on the precipice now of we've seen a lot of these like public defender cases where broad sections of federal prohibitions have been struck down, which, don't get me wrong, is really good. But like the real meat and potatoes test of Bruin, I think, will be like possession based things for state level laws. So our assault weapons bans and mag bans and feature tests and all this sort of crap. Seeing the state woefully unable to defend these things so far is really promising. And here in this next month or two, we're gonna have our first opinions on these things. And boy, oh boy, and my little rat whiskers are twitching because it's exciting.
And not to say we don't expect that the judiciary will break its back to misapply the law, right?
Right.
Hoping that the Supreme Court will neglect to do its job, which is a bet that they've been able to make quite reliably for a decade.
That's true. But
for decades. So that is a thing. But anyway, let's move on to the next thing. A lot of you guys have asked me to talk about this, and I've been unsure what you meant until finally now. You guys asked me to talk about the FPC. Here it is. The M&P FPC. Folding pistol carbone. Right?
This is sort of a funny thing where there's a couple companies now that make guns modeled after the Kel-Tec Sub 2000, which was like an old gun. The Sub 2000 has been around for a long time.
Yes, and it's good.
In Sub 2000, Kel-Tec rather, on their social medias have now been posting memes about these other companies stealing their homework, which I think is absolutely hilarious because I like pull
this up.
Kel-Tec is like a Kel-Tec's such a good-natured company in that regard.
Yeah.
But
so they've got here a meme where it's Mr. Bean when he was copying off of someone's test, and it says Smith and Wesson looking over the test.
Yeah, Smith and Wesson stealing Kel-Tec's answers.
Yeah, seems to be a trend starting at Smith and Wesson Inc. You run out of your own ideas. That's good. That's pretty good.
It's pretty funny, but it's if you ask me personally, I like how the Sub 2000 looks a little bit better.
A lot better.
The sort of sketchy thing about this M&P is that side folds, and a side folding gun at a public range is going to be an interesting thing because you're going to end up flagging the guy next to you. Now, I'm not like the biggest flagging safety Janny in the world, but I also don't shoot at public ranges. So I'm sure that would change if like the idiot next to me I don't know and I don't trust them.
Right.
And so
it does break at the barrel.
Right.
So that is the thing, is where presumably if the gun was folding, it would be unfireable. And
it would be safe to swing open, but still one of those things where it's like ranges are not going to like these guns once they start showing up.
The other is, so the reason, it's clear the reason they went side folding, and that's because the issue
solutions.
Right. The issue with the Sub 2000, if you're a little tiny, perhaps a little microscopic little baby that uses optics, perhaps if you have problems reading or walking on your own and you use optics, it's hard because the Kel-Tec folds up onto the rail. There's a couple of companies that have come up with like folding things. that work to alleviate that. I choose to just not put an optic on my sub 2000. It's been very easy for me. That said, so now Smith & Wesson has come up with it where it breaks at the barrel and folds along the receiver. Sure, it does get it to the same length, but what's the issue when you are dealing with presumably the purpose of these is like backpacking or whatever, just a nice little package to put away. It's width.
Right. You now have a gun that's 2 guns wide.
Yes.
Which sort of like doesn't, I guess you lose your length still, right?
Right.
Instead of having a gun that's just like 2 guns tall, which isn't, right, it's not even 2 guns tall, right? Because it's just the width of the barrel and its handguard extra taller. Right. So it's like a gun that's 20% taller versus a gun that's 100% wider.
And they went full with the thickness thing, right? It takes 2 mags in the stock.
Yeah, which is that's such a decision. Like a decision was made there.
That's very low energy in my opinion. I don't like it. But you might. Whatever. I don't care. But it is very clearly, very, very clearly inspired by the sub 2000 down to the effectively, call it a buffer tube, even though it's not. Maybe it is a buffer. I don't know. But here's the thing. Takedown guns have existed for a long time. The easiest way to do it is to just have the whole front end rotate off.
That's how the Scrimchester 1897 does it.
Yeah, and the Rargar 1022s.
That's true.
And that's great. Like I have the 1022 backpacker thing, and the thing's great. I don't know why people aren't doing that. If you wanted to solve the sub 2000 problem, why not just do it that way? Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, so Smith & Wesson did this thing. The Floridians noticed, got upset, which is funny. Speaking of Floridians, we have a company in Florida with a French name. It's Le Manufacture d'Armes et Carillon de Floride. Your wind chime superstore, guys. You're going to find all of the best prices on chimes, AR components, and other various and sundry items. And the coupon code FRN that we have for you guys is finally fixed. You guys can go out, get whatever you want. You get your nice discount on stuff that's already unbelievably cheap. Go to maf-arms.com. You guys are going to see extreme values, and you will give us food if you do it. We will get to eating.
True. It's a reverse. It's a reverse. Like some companies put candy in your orders, and the way that the Florida Wind Chime Corporation company works out is they put candy in your orders too.
Yeah, we do. But
then you give them the food, and so it's technically a racket where you exchange food for food.
Everyone's eating.
It's a food transcurrency transducer.
It's a continuous centipede food.
Of food.
Yep. So that's
for
big.
Hungry boys.
We got more to talk about with Smith & Wesson now, and this is dreadful.
This was an absolute roller coaster to watch unfold.
It was emotional. Yeah, you were there for it on the Titterbird.
Yeah,
app, right?
I was sitting there refreshing it because I was like, oh, this is funny. How long until they delete this? And they sure didn't.
So Smith & Wesson teamed up with Perception Brand Corporation.com company. And they posted this picture. Gemtech Innovation, Smith & Wesson Manufacturing. Perception Brand creates apparel plus goods for the tactical athlete. Wow, cringe. Thanks, Brand.
Super cringe. Super cringe.
Silence, Brand.
The gun in question, I think, is actually kind of cool. Smith & Wesson's designing an AR that's like got a different design to the gas system to make one with a suppressor a little bit better. I think my understanding of the way it works is it technically adds technically subtracts dwell time, so that whenever you have a suppressor on the gun, you then get a little bit less gas into the system, which makes the gun run a little bit smoother. I watched. And
this is something because of the back pressure, it'll like move some sort of internal piston.
Right. So I watched a video and they explained how it works without like explaining the details and the specifics of it, because I think at the time they were like saying this makes the gun run more better. So they showed the outside of it, but not the internals, because there may have still been patent or IP issues that were getting squared away. But like it seemed like a really, really cool idea. And so then I guess to help market it, they found this Perception Brand Company. And so this cat, so in this picture where this first comes up, we've got this cat, you know, your typical
I hate this type of I hate this tactical, like he's got his tactical tattoos all over his arm, and he's got his black t-shirt with just the yellow PB in gold in Germanic old style text on there. And so everyone starts saying like, hey, that's a Proud Boys shirt. Right.
Yeah. PB. It clearly means Proud Boys. And so people were going nuts about this, especially, Proud Boys is, one of those things like the Boogaloo where it sort of started as a joke, but it was almost immediately hijacked by people who were, something between right of center all the way to like, far right people sort of embraced the idea. And so it's one of those things where then it gets demonized by people and sort of essentially, you either leave the group if you're there sort of just right of center, or you're alienated all the way over to the right. And so a lot of the left-leaning gun owners and gun groups like started dogpiling Smith & Wesson, saying like, what on earth are you guys doing? I thought Smith & Wesson was like an okay company, and here you are throwing yourselves in with these right-wing people. What the heck? And so this was all sort of exploding, and then Smith & Wesson did a clarification. I don't know if it was an edit or a whole new post on Instagram where they said, guys, look, the PB doesn't stand for Proud Boys. It stands for Perception Brand. Perception Brand's this company. And then, most people are like, oh, okay. So it's a big misunderstanding, very unfortunate misunderstanding. The similarity of the logos and the colors. Oh, we jumped on Smith & Wesson too hard. And then people go digging into the company. It's a really, really young company, like really young. It makes no sense why Smith & Wesson wants to like do a partnership apparel brand with them. And then it turns out that they
found the back of the shirt. Hold on, they found the back of the shirt, which is right here.
The back of the t-shirt, the brass knuckles thing is a Proud Boys sort of logo, right? They've had that on their own sweatshirts and apparel and stuff before, right? So there you go for the
So I've got a picture. So first we got a picture of the back of this shirt, which says "Support your local enforcer." This is claimed to be the back of the shirt, right? I didn't turn the shirt.
That is certainly the back of the shirt,
right? Okay, I'm just being fair. I'm being fair. And it says heavy-handed, capital H. Nothing. That's fine.
Yeah, that's probably a coincidence.
It's fine. It's just, I don't get it. And there's the bloody gold brass knuckles. And then here we have the actual Proud Boys sweatshirts, which is a gold brass knuckles. And look, I just want to make clear, I could care less.
I do not care for outrage, identity politics, purity tests with a gun company. I just don't. But that doesn't mean that I think people shouldn't, like, if this is something that you feel very strongly about, then I'm not going to say that you shouldn't, just that I don't. But it was interesting to see, like, people jump to the defense of Smith & Wesson, then it turns out like, oh my God, how is it? Well, and perhaps to the credit of the people who were very outraged about it, maybe it wasn't a case of, wow, why didn't Smith & Wesson look into this? And Smith & Wesson did, and they went, okay, why not? We'll run with that. What's the worst that could happen? And so it's sort of it's a marketing disaster. And I'm sure in marketing school they teach you to not do stuff like this. And so this is one of those things where, and I even saw a Stone Toss meme about this, where it's the cheeseburger selling meme, where it's like Smith and Wesson with their new little gun and they're posing with their Proud Boys shirt or whatever, and it's like, are you sure this is going to help us sell rifles? And then they're like, rifles? We're not. And it sort of seems like what does this apparel have to do with the tactical athlete? It's like a cheap, I'm sure made in China shirt. What's the tactical athlete plug in here?
That's much cheaper to get from India now, that.
There we go. But it's one of those things where it beggars belief from me. So I won't say that the people who are outraged are outraged over something stupid. I don't personally have enough outrage to go around. Like, I don't. My purity test of what guns I buy and or like. First off, I don't buy. I just look at the gun. It's just like with a car. I look at the specifications and does it look cool? And that's how you should be too. And you should make fun of gun companies that use sex to sell guns, because that's insane. Using sex to sell guns is uncool, and then using weird yellow Germanic lettering for your gun, that like you're selling your tactical Playboy apparel or whatever the fuck it is. Yeah. For your for your gun, that's like, the gun's cool. You don't have to bring in all this fucking weird stuff to sell it. You really don't. Yeah. Like this like the tactical athlete. What does the tactical athlete need this?
It does. It's not. It's just fake garbage.
It's just so stupid.
Silly with this whole tactical tattoo, like sheepdog. Anyway, all right. Now that we've alienated most of our audience, let's get to our last story. This is in New Jersey. New Jersey. A New Jersey man faces multiple federal criminal charges after he allegedly attempted to board an airplane with firearms, ammunition, a bulletproof vest, and fraudulent law enforcement credentials. So
I wish that was me.
Well, dude, he was doing the full like cop role play. He had a 40 cal Glock 22.
That's big.
An DPMS AR-10 and an AR-15 machine gun.
Yeah, he was maybe he was just lost.
So, yeah, according to the complaint, Cloudon's luggage also contained forged identification documents like United States Marshal credentials bearing his name and photograph and a United States Marshal badge. The U.S. Marshal Service confirmed that Cloudon was never employed by the agency, according to the Justice Department.
Dang, you'd expect it at least do something cool and be like, yeah, he's one of us.
He was trying to go to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It's like New Jersey to Fort Lauderdale.
Trying to come home to his people.
Yeah, that's big. But yeah, that's a 42-year-old original from Bergen County.
That's a thing that a person can do.
Stupid,
that's a thing. Like you actually think you're going to get a bunch of guns and ammo through a TSA checkpoint because you have like a air marshal badge you bought from China. Okay, sure.
I wonder if he's gotten away with this before, because I feel like that could
probably could.
You probably
if you got somebody who's new enough at the TSA, and like especially if the line's long and they're just trying to get people moved through, they'll just be like, yeah, okay, air marshal, sure.
Wait, no, because I've seen people do that, and they pull you into a side room and like talk to you. I don't know if they check.
Right.
Usually.
I'd imagine they would, but then again, I'd imagine they do a lot of things efficiently and smartly, and they don't. So
yeah. So anyway, that's stupid. That was really dumb.
The moral of the story is, if you're going to get on an airplane with your guns, make sure that it's a 357 SIG, because that's what the air marshals use.
Yeah. Come on, dude.
They probably saw it was a Glock 22, and they're like, phony, get this guy out of here.
Yeah, get this state out of here.
And it's a 40 faker.
Yeah, faker.
I personally get on airplanes all the time with my 357 SIG. I just flash it there at the TSA line and say I'm an air marshal, and they're like, up 357 SIG, sir, go straight through.
Yeah, only air marshals. All right. Anyway, last up, boys, we have our oldest friend, Patriot Patch Company. Custom design patches, apparel, and accessories for any freedom-loving individual. And of course, you want to go there, join the Patch of the Month Club, check out all of their patches, and use promotional code TWIG10, TWIG10. You're going to get 10% off. So that's huge. We've got, let's look at, what are their, they have tactical patches. 100% pro gun.
Aim for zombies. Okay, I was about to say, that's a
barbecue sauce grenade. Oh, this brace yourself one's kind of good.
That's actually pretty good.
Yeah. So yeah, check. Oh, that's good. Yeah, no, check out their website. There's good stuff on there. They've always been nice. And you know, when you join the Patch of the Month Club, if you're into patches, you know, I've always got the latest one here on my microphone, Seeking Love, and it's a Javelin. It's kind of nice to get a little surprise, and it's not that much money to just, you know, boost your spirits every month. So support a company that supports the show. Go to patriotpatch.co and use promotional code TWIG10. So, true. Mr. Iban, do you have any parting wisdom for our guest? For our audience?
I guess because we've been doing it, we're going to keep doing it until the law is gone. The Illinois update.
Okay.
The judge did a hearing, a little phone call, not an actual hearing. He did a phone call with all of the four big cases that's in front of him. The judge that we like, and they sort of consolidated the cases so that all four cases are one, and they're bringing it under the one case that I think brings some pretty good challenge. It's not my favorite of the four cases, but I guess we don't get to pick and choose because first filed or whatever.
Right.
But the judge gave what I think. You know, reading little snippets that people took from the call, it seems like the judge is like very, very wary of the state in this case. Like it seems like he's pretty squarely interested in getting this injunction decided as quickly as he can. So the state has until March 2nd to file their responses. At which point the plaintiffs in all 4 cases said that we want a chance to reply to their answers, and the judge says that's atypical. I don't allow that. But then they all argued, like, in all of the other cases, the state has brought up such like bizarre analogs to our laws, to their laws. Like they bring up all these racist laws and stuff, and we've got to have a chance to correct that if they do it, because they're misapplying what Bruin tells us to do, what tells them to do. And so the judge is like, okay, fine, like you get 15 pages each or whatever, and you can't duplicate arguments, so you must coordinate.
Right.
And so the judge seems like he's got his head on his shoulders pretty well in that regard. And then he's got a hearing scheduled for the end of March. But at least from my understanding, once he hears back from the state, and I guess once then he hears from the plaintiff's response to the state, prior to that hearing, he could drop his sort of decision on the preliminary injunction, and that the hearing, as far as I understand it, is going to be like the first hearing on the merits of the case. Mm-hmm. So by the end of March, we should certainly have an answer on that case. And, California's assault weapon and stuff will have an answer even sooner. And then it seems like Maryland's is coming really close here too. So we're going to...
Very exciting stuff.
And of course, the best part about that is it's 3 completely different parts of the country, three completely different courts.
Very distinct. And I'll just again say that, guys, Maryland shall issue got to be one of the greatest, if not the greatest, state gun rights organization. They are hyper aggressive. The attorney that has been doing most of their stuff is just, I just love talking to him. He's so brilliant. And if you have the means and you want to support these orgs, I would definitely recommend helping them out, because the way that they've brought these challenges, and I feel very good about it. I think they're definitely deserving of your support. And also, it's 100% volunteer. They don't even pay themselves.
Right. So there's zero chance of jet plane flights and fancy suits and stuff. It doesn't happen. They're not wasting your money. And the question that I've seen always asked with like supporting a state group that's not in your state is like, why would I care? And of course, to some extent, these groups will fight state level laws, sometimes in state court. And so then there's no benefit for you then, other than like your fellow man becomes more equal if they win, which is always cool, right? I don't want to say that's lame, but anytime they're fighting in federal court, that applies to the whole country. So especially groups like MSI, like if you go and read their briefs, like some of the arguments they make are like clever. Like it's not these sort of canned arguments that everybody seems to be getting from the same place, because a lot of them just copy paste each other's arguments and don't do any thinking, which is like sort of a plague for some national organizations that file lazy lawsuits. Yep. But
yeah, so I will say them, and then also seriously, SAF, Alan Gottlieb is brilliant. And the other thing is, so at SAF and MSI, both of them, there is evidence that those people have fired a gun.
Yes, that's true. Right. That's the ultimate test for is this gun rights group going to be really good and have your best interest?
Can I even remotely? So this is what can I even remotely support this group? I'm going to look at their top member, the brass, right, and see if I can find evidence that they have owned or shot a gun.
Their leaders or their leadership, or like even the people who do like sort of PR for them, right?
Right.
Because like our favorite California Greek gun lawyer, he's part of a law firm that's retained by or works with the California Rifle Pistol Association. CRPA doesn't really have a lot of social media, but this guy's sort of out there fronting the lawsuits for them. Right. And there's tons of evidence of the guy shooting gun, and it's cool. And he even asks technical questions about guns, and it's so awesome to see, right? Because a lot of these lawyers and a lot of these groups who fight for Second Amendment rights,
they're just on contract.
Right. Not that I'm saying it's bad that they're only doing it for money, right? Because they are still sticking up for us. But like they don't own guns, and some of them don't really own guns and don't really shoot guns, and so at the end of the day, they're just there sort of looking to make a buck off of it, and they're making a buck fighting for us, which makes them like a mercenary. But the sort of guys who are there like in the trenches with you, like they're fighting for this stuff because they really believe in it and they want it for themselves too. Those, at least if you ask me, are the ones most deserving of your support, because if it's up to them and like they're at their 40 hours for the week and they're thinking like, do I want to make my arguments any better or tweak this or fix that? A guy who you're just paying isn't going to do that. But a guy who's passionate about, I think everybody should have this sort of thing. Like a guy who's really there. I think the easy way that you find that dividing line is like, if you can find evidence that they own and shoot guns, that's probably a really good thing.
Yep. Last plug there. In Florida, you can donate to the law firm that I'm a partner at. And I literally just do gun stuff there. The 2A war chest.
Is there any proof that you have guns?
No.
This is concerning.
Don't look for my other channel either.
He's got none.
Don't look. But yeah, no, so there'll be a description link for that. It's on GiftSendGo. It's the Zerme LaRosier 2A war chest, and it's earmarked just for us to be able to work on important Second Amendment cases. Like we've got the Florida challenge to the pistol brace ruling, and we've got quite a few criminal matters that we're taking on because it's the right thing to do. And I thank God that there are other people in the space that are doing it just because it's the right thing. So it's a good moment for us as gun owners and as people who just want to live free. So I'm very hopeful. I can be a very cynical person, but I do think there's a lot of cause to be cautiously optimistic if you're a liberty-minded individual right now. So on that note, and you have to, if you're gonna do the Illinois, you have to put it in the notes so I don't try to end the show.
Yeah, that's true. I always forget.
On that note, thank you all so much for coming, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.